Good morning and welcome to Bahais today. I am Nadia Etemad, your host for this new show brought to you by MLTV Mainline Network by the Baha'i community of Radnor. This program will focus on initiating a conversation on social change and community building. There will be a series of new talks regularly with guests from the Baha'i community who will share with us their experiences on this journey of making the world a better place for us all. Today, we have with us a very talented young man, Evan Ehlers, who will share about his nonprofit by the name of Sharing Access. Welcome to Bahais today, Evan.
Thank you so much for having me, Nadia.
So I know that you started Sharing Access while you were still in school. Can you talk a little bit about that process and what it is?
Sure. Yeah. So I started Sharing Access while I was at Drexel University. I was a student for about 3 years when I had a bunch of meal swipes left in my dining account that I knew I wouldn't be able to use before the end of the year. So this happens to a lot of college students, and I didn't want to let those meals go to waste. Not only did I pay for them, but they could be used in a lot better ways than simply turning into a zero in my dining account. So I decided to swipe them all out, and then I drove to Center City, Philadelphia, and gave them out. And this day changed my life forever. And I went back to my university and I tried to create a meal swipe donation program. So from there, it has most definitely grown and turned into a much greater movement where we're working now with grocery stores and restaurants to deliver their leftover food to hunger relief organizations throughout the city.
So who do you primarily donate to?
So we're working with all the major hunger relief organizations. We're working with treatment facilities, rehabilitation facilities, workforce retraining programs, community centers, senior homes. And then we're also doing like street distributions for free food, similar to how some of the meal sites are operating amid COVID-19.
That is wonderful, Evan. Have you had any experiences in your lifetime that have influenced you to want to do this kind of work?
So I think coming from my first job as a cashier in a grocery store, I knew that I wanted to do something that was a bit non-traditional, something that wasn't the normal 9 to 5. It's really draining for me to do a job that I didn't feel was meaningful. So I knew that I wanted to start something and do something on my own, but I didn't really know what it would be. And I've always loved interacting, connecting with people, and kind of stumbled upon the fact that food is the greatest way to build community, and it's one of the most common things that we have with everyone around us. So, starting a movement or a nonprofit focused around this was something that really just clicked without me even knowing prior that this is something that would make me happy. So it was kind of like a happy stumbling upon.
So how do you believe that Sharing Access works to bring together communities?
So food is a staple in every community, right? Everyone needs to eat within a community, and how that food is distributed among people in that community varies. But one constant is that there is usually always excess. And this is happening on a national scale, where approximately 1/3 of all food goes to waste. It's about 126 billion pounds of food each year. And when you start to look at the statistics of food insecurity on a national level, about 40 million Americans are considered food insecure. So there's literally enough food, more than double the amount of food being wasted. There's enough food to feed every single person in America that is facing food insecurity, if we were able to work in grassroots ways with our communities to feed our communities. So that's kind of like the driving factor of how this is able to build community, is because it's a common factor across every living neighborhood. And there's nothing more that builds trust and builds opportunities to connect with one another than sitting down at a table and eating a meal.
So primarily, what is the source of your excess that you then distribute?
So we work with about 100 food businesses in Philadelphia. We're working with grocery stores and restaurants, and we're picking up everything from produce that just has minor dents in it, or meals that were cooked day of and weren't sold that day. We would capture them at night, that evening. A bunch of expiration product that's like 3 to 5 days before its expiration date. Grocery stores have a practice of getting that off of their shelves because it increases their sales the more new product they have. Everyone wants that like oldest, best buy date, the one that is furthest away from expiring. So
Right.
it means that, the ones that are 1 to 3 days up are like first on the chopping block, and that contributes to the massive amount of food waste that is happening on a national scale. But focusing in here in Philadelphia, we're working with grocery stores and restaurants and places that are constantly pulling stuff off of their sales, their inventory, simply because they want to sell more product that's fresher. So to me, it's like a no-brainer that this is what every community should be doing if this is the way the food industry is run.
What are the biggest challenges you believe that you're facing in trying to distribute food and build these communities?
I would say right now it's a logistical challenge. The coordination of getting food from point A to point B is the most difficult part of all of this. We tend to be supported by a lot of the community, whether that be food businesses or the community organizations and neighbors that we are delivering to. Everyone supports sharing excess. It's a concept more than anything, more than a nonprofit or more than a movement. People are really like the biggest help to all of this, and it seems to be the lowest barrier that we face. It's the logistical barriers of the timing of perishability for food, where we have a narrow window of how we can capture food and then effectively distribute that in a way that's efficient, but also is having real impact in the community. So I would say that our biggest challenge always comes back to like reality, logistics, and driving through busy Philly streets.
That makes sense. And has COVID-19 affected sharing access in any way?
Yeah, absolutely. It has increased the need for our services by over 300%. So you have businesses when COVID first hit that needed to close their doors and have literally tens of thousands of pounds of food to give in one single day, which our team worked to recover. But then community organizations are also closing at the same time. So people are also getting laid off from a lot of their jobs, especially service industry jobs. And the need for just a week's worth of food has now gone up at very low cost or no cost at all. So that's what we're able to provide. And we were brought in along with every hunger relief organization throughout the city to increase our operations and now operate in a totally new world and way of how we distribute food to the community.
Has COVID-19 made the distribution of food more difficult for you? Like the ability to distribute the food?
It did when it first hit, because community organizations closed down. But now so many alternative methods for food distribution have popped up that we are able to find a lot of different ways to get food out to the public, including a lot of pop-up distributions and kind of things that are just set up by the community. They're requesting food donations. We're able to connect with the community leader and supply them with 300 to 500 pounds of food for delivery.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful work. And where are you guys based?
So we're based in West Philadelphia. We actually just got our first warehouse. So we're, basically just on like 50th and Lancaster. And we're really focused in how we can make impact, especially in West Philadelphia, with it being a food desert and, with there not being really that much help for this area specifically. But although we're based here in Philadelphia, we have a national scope. We believe that if we can make it work here in one of the biggest, poorest cities in the United States, that we can make it work in any major metropolitan city that has especially universities within them, because that's how we source our engagement.
And for the viewers that might not know, what is a food desert? And how does that affect the community?
Yeah, so a food desert is just a geographic location that lacks access or affordability for healthy food options. There's, not your typical Whole Foods just like right in the center in the middle. A lot of communities are relying off of corner stores and mom and pop shops, which is an amazing facet of communities and something that we love, especially here in West Philadelphia. But it also means that there's limited access to fresh produce, and typically the cost for that produce is not very affordable, especially if you're getting it from places that have higher price tags that you need to travel a long distance to get to. The cost all adds up. The closer in proximity that you are to natural and organic food, the better you are.
So I imagine that has a big impact on the health of the community, the actual physical health of the people that reside there.
Yes, that's correct. And the science behind eating healthy food, I think, is very, very widely discussed. But we're not in the business of telling people what kind of food they should eat, and pushing our support on people. We just simply want to make it available for people who are seeking that type of food. And making it something that is completely free and readily available to everyone on a regular basis.
And for people that aren't, used to to having the access of fresh or whole food, do you see that they have a willingness to eat differently or to
Um,
choose?
that's a good question. Often it's dependent on a lot of factors of like whether that's cultural and something that you cooked already with your family and something that's like built into something that you eat already, versus like creating new recipes is actually a big barrier to using fresh produce. And that's something that a lot of people don't choose that option because it's another step. It's another work, another step to make a meal is to now learn a new recipe. So sometimes habits of buying the same thing is what people will stick to. But I think it's a matter of how it's prepared. And, we especially love preparing fresh food and having it in almost like a grab and go like style where there's really not that much preparation needed and you can fall in love with a healthy dish because you had it for free.
That's wonderful. Have you seen a change since you're based in West Philly in the closeness of the community or the residents?
Yes, definitely. When we are actually like hosting our distributions, the people that come out and volunteer are often from the very community itself that we're serving. And it's also really exciting when people come out because it's not just here, grab your food and leave. It's, an actual connection and it's bonding and it's getting to know people, which I think is always a really good part of any community is that people know their neighbors. And it's one of the things that I think people don't do so much anymore, especially like our generation. I think it's like we're so like within our like own networks, especially with social media, that having that like person to person connection of just even who's in your neighborhood and in a city, especially, seems to be less of a priority. And it's funny that in a city, a lot of times people are actually more alone than you are in like an isolated place out in like the middle of the country where it's just a small town, because in that small town all you have is to rely on each other. But in a city you could actually be isolated very easily because there's so many people that there's no need to know anyone on an individual basis.
I didn't ever think of it that way, but that makes a lot of sense. And did the COVID-19 pandemic affect the ability? You said that neighbors were coming out and connecting to like access this food. Did that change anything for them? The pandemic
um,
specifically?
Yeah, I mean, definitely, like our interactions have to be limited to, to the preventative nature of all the precautions that everyone needs to take with their masks, with their social distancing. So it's been interesting to come up with new and innovative ways to still connect with people, but from 6 feet apart. Yeah.
All right, Evan. Thank you so much for coming on to the show. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thanks
Is
for
there
having me.
anything else you'd like to share with us before we close?
Sure. Yeah. If anyone wants to get involved or volunteer, we're always looking for more people to help us within our network. So definitely visit sharingexcess.com and see how you can get involved or even donate food.
Well, Evan, thank you so much for coming on to the show. And thank you for sharing with all our viewers how you're helping build communities.
Well, thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure talking with you, Nadia.
All righty. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks.